Hey, what up, guys? I did say in my other video that there would be a potential to a part 2 on why super counters suck, and I guess this could be technically called a part 2 to that video, but instead we're not going to necessarily focus too much on super counters. I kind of outlined everything I need to do in that video. If you do disagree at this time, you're in the minority and you don't understand how games work, so we could just ignore you. But in this video, we're actually going to talk about fundamentally what changes happened in Sparking Zero, then Budokai Tenkaichi 3, because that is going to be specific in what mechanics they're planning to change in December, because if they don't change certain things, the game will still actually be broken as it is, and you might actually have to have super counter, which is a huge problem. So we're going to go over it, we're going to look over it. There's actually a lot of topics to cover. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but we're going to just jump right into that now. Now, step-in inherently isn't bad. It actually existed in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but the problem with step-in in this game is that you're actually allowed to. The reason why that's the problem is because these standard combos that don't really take much skill or variation do a lot of damage, especially depending on who you're using, and there's no defensive options away from it. But Budokai Tenkaichi 3 did this a lot better and differently. Now, as you can see here in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Gogeta here is only allowed one step-in combo extender. Now, the reason why this is very important in terms of the balance of the game is that, yeah, you can tack on extra damage with a step-in, but you have to do a variation, and a variation that your opponent can potentially vanish as a defensive option in order to keep the combo going, making defense and offense balanced. So really, just to surmise, with this upcoming update they're saying in December, this type of mechanic, having two step-ins, actually would have to get removed, because realistically speaking, if super counters did start to get nerfed, all we'd honestly start seeing is more people just start to move towards the double step-in combo starter, which realistically takes way too much health and doesn't take enough skill to necessarily execute. And the problem with that is that, one, you already have enough people trying to call the game not competitive on any standpoint and not necessarily a real fighter because how easy the combo looping is, and that is definitely true, and this starts to turn into Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm if we're only pressing square, 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 square all the time. You want to have different combo variations, different combo mix-ups that you as well as your opponent start to utilize, and then it starts to become a game of chess like most fighting games start to be at higher levels. But as it stands right now, with how step-in is, that necessarily just has to be completely removed in order to have a fair and balanced game, along with super counter getting nerfed. Now, that being said, we can move on to the next portion of this video in regards to other mechanics that definitely need to be changed back to the original form of this game. Now, it was actually somebody in my comment section, I think his name was Ghost, who told me to do a video on perception. And initially, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but then when I started seeing people spam perception like this in ranked, I was like, yeah, perception's very much disgusting. In Budokai Tenkaichi 3, it did not work like this, and we'll see how. So as we've seen from those clips, in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, using perception actually took skill because you were locked in animation and you really couldn't spam it. So you had to actually read. In this game, it's something that's easily too forgiving and something that's way too spammable, especially in the defensive meta. Now, Sparking Zero has additionally added more vanishes as well as Dragon Dash follow-ups after a smash attack or a super counter. And I guess they wanted to do it to make the game more exciting, but the problem with this is that it's led to different metas just surrounding super counter in general. Because someone can tack on a lot of damage after a Vanish War if someone is left with no key. That person can get really free punishes that just kind of lead to a repetitive playstyle. In the old iteration of Budokai Tenkaichi 3, you didn't have that many vanishes that you could do, or that many Dragon Dashes that you could do, unless you were in max power mode. But I guess certain characters, and the stronger they are, the more vanishes and Dragon Dashes they get, can continuously do this. So it's just leading to a meta where people will try to conserve enough ki to win the Vanish War and then end out these bouts like this. Now in BT3, everyone was held to only 2 follow-ups. So even Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, the strongest person in the game, can only do a Vanish and then a Dragon Dash to maximize how many follow-ups he could do. He couldn't even do 2 Vanishes or 2 Dragon Dashes. It had to be 1 of each in order to increase how many follow-ups. Now this is something a lot different in Sparking Zero. It's actually character dependent on how many follow-ups that you do end up getting and how much you can gain from it. And the follow-ups don't have to be shared, so you could do 3 Dragon Dashes or 3 Vanishes if your character has that allotment. Either way, it could be kind of frustrating fighting against. Another thing that's really important to note, but doesn't necessarily get much attention, is also recovery. In Sparking Zero, recovery animations take an extremely long time, so when you're pushed away from your opponent, you really don't have that much access to them in order to still be aggressive. But in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, that was different. For instance, in this clip that you're seeing here, even something like a lift strike into something that would put you into freefall indefinitely in Sparking Zero doesn't necessarily happen. Also, getting hit with a smash, you can recover from it a lot quicker than you can in Sparking Zero. And mind you, I'm playing with 2 controllers here, so I have to use one controller, drop it, and then move to the next controller in order to start mashing circle. I could do so a lot quicker if I didn't even have that restriction either. But notice how quick I am to recover during my flight animations, and I'm showing you even some of the longer flight animations versus what you can do when you actually mash circle. It's a lot shorter. But going back to Sparking Zero, we've noticed that there's a lot of metas that have evolved around using certain attacks to launch your opponent away, or even launch them in a state of free fall when you're at the top of the map. And what can occur here is like some really cheesy things. So people can enter into sparking in that moment, people can fully charge Kamehamehas in that moment. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't necessarily seem like realistically a very earned thing to happen. But that's just how the game is necessarily built. But comparing something that we've seen in Sparking Zero to something like Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 had a better grasp on what to really do about it. Here we could even see the same thing. I cannot launch him into a state of absolute freefall with that attack. So BT3 handles this engagement quite well. Now, coupled with our last point, lock-on is something that's almost integral to the Budokai Tenkaichi 3 series because of the free roam aspect, but it's not something that was really too distracting in at least Budokai Tenkaichi 3. They did it really well. You could really find your opponents quickly, especially when you're in front of them. When Sparking Zero, even this clip you're seeing now, it's like hard for the characters to lock on immediately, even though someone's right in front of them, leading to some super cheesy plays. Like, after watching this tournament go down in real time, I was so disgusted that I just had to leave. So let's look at Budokai Tenkaichi 3 really handled lock-on the correct way. So as we see in this example here, Goku's going to get hit with a 100 times Big Bang Kamehameha. Now, after this, he's looking straight, he can't find Gogeta. But the moment he's actually in view or in shot on the screen, it instantly locks on. And there's certain circumstances, when we're about to see right here, when you get hit with an ultimate, it's not always a guarantee that your opponent is just not going to be locked onto you anymore. There's many circumstances where they'll still be locked onto you even after the attack. As we can see here, Gogeta is still looking at Goku and the lock-on is still there. Now we're going to see a 100 times Big Bang Kamehameha, one that's absolutely destroying the Earth. And even after this, we see Goku is still able to lock on to Gogeta quite quickly. And we see that Sparking Zero is completely absent of a really good lock-on mechanic. We see Gohan is able to land a super right in front of you in space after said super, because how quickly we gain skill points in this new iteration. He's able to then go into Sparking yet again, and even though Jiren's right in front of him, he probably couldn't land a Ki Blast if he tried because he's not locked on. So then Gohan gets a free additional super, which is just entirely super cheesy and honestly just needs to go. So we're going to talk about our favorite guy Broly here and how there's been fundamental changes to him. First, we're going to start off with his Ultimate Blast. In Sparking Zero, his Ultimate Blast is a decent amount bigger than it is in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. A lot of people have issue defending against this blast. Now, of course, it's an ultimate, so it's not supposed to be the easiest thing to avoid, but they definitely beefed it up a bit. So in this clip of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 we're about to see, you'll see here that he still has the same kit. He can still power up when he wants to, but let's take a look at his Omega Blaster. It's bright at first, but it's still a lot smaller. You can even avoid that. You can dash out the way. You can do a lot of other things, but you won't necessarily be guaranteed a hit if you're the person playing as Broly. Now, another thing they also changed about him is his rush. Gigantic Hammer is the same when it comes to the ki consumption, and it's unblockable. But let's look at its range. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Its range isn't meant to be super oppressive because it's an unblockable rush attack. So an unblockable rush attack should be rewarded by having a mix-up or a setup to get such an attack off. But let's look at Sparking Zero and see how it handles that. Charges up. Yeah! Pretty far distance for an unblockable rush. Now, of course, you can't zoom across the stages like other people, but it's still oppressive. Well, look at his Ki Blast. Now we're going to see Broly right over here. He can shoot. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Nope, he can just continuously shoot. Let's look at Budokai Tenkaichi 3. That's it. More like a shotgun blast, not necessarily just something that's necessarily oppressive. You can avoid it. It's not even fast moving. This is what Broly was in the original game, and that's why no one was complaining about him that much. Still has super armor, still very strong, but not nearly as oppressive and cheesy. And just to be clear, I do completely understand that ki spamming isn't something that's just limited to Broly, but everybody in this game can pretty much ki spam. Goku can ki spam, Vegeta can ki spam, Frieza can ki spam, but this was different in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. As we see here, Goku can only shoot 7 Ki Blasts. He's limited to 7 Ki Blasts. Doesn't matter if he's in max power mode, doesn't matter if he has a ton of Ki, he can only shoot 7 Ki Blasts before he has to reset. But if you look at somebody like Vegeta, he could shoot up to 10 Ki Blasts. And I think Budokai Tenkaichi 3 did a pretty good job with this because it made more characters feel unique, and Vegeta was a blast type character. But moving on from that, let's talk about the metas. Now, it comes as no surprise to why Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta was meta in the game. He has a really great defense, insane offense, he's very quick, and he does a complete burst amount of damage. Also remember that number that's about to appear on the screen. But what's also interesting is that in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, there isn't any special scaling, so if you do a combo and then do a special after it, your combo and your special will do full damage. So here's an example. So as you can see in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, the combo that Gogeta is doing right now isn't nearly as much as in Sparking Zero. It's 4,500 less. But look at the special scaling. He's about to rank up 2 bars of health off of that. And it was cool because at the same time people could express their combos freely. Now let's address the Vegeta Afterimage Strike meta. The reason why this is so annoying to go against is 1, the skill count meter goes up way too quickly, and 2, you are guaranteed that you're going to win your neutral engagements most of the time. Afterimage Strike lasts quite a bit of time, I think it's around 10 seconds, if not 15 seconds, and during that time, if you notice, the skill count is still charging as I'm in these engagements. So by the time one Afterimage Strike runs out, you have a chance to have another Afterimage Strike, which is simply super oppressing. Now, in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, the skill count didn't necessarily go up that fast, especially because there was no revenge mechanic. That's really why it goes fast in Sparking Zero. But if you look here, sometimes I'd go behind the person using Afterimage Strike, and sometimes I wouldn't. But also, here's the drawback you're about to see. Vegito can't charge his ki nearly as fast. And that's actually really good. And it's funny because if they implemented this in Sparking Zero, that would help a lot because people would counter it just by having better ki control. But in Sparking Zero, as I just used Afterimage Strike just now, I could charge my ki just fine. Even after using another attack to waste some more, I could still charge my ki just fine. And that's a huge problem in order to balance the meta. Another thing to mention is how quickly skill count generates in Sparking Zero versus Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Necessarily, they're both similar in how quickly they generate in base, but there's a mechanic in Sparking Zero that really amps that up. So as we're seeing, it takes 54 seconds to generate 3 skill counts, enough for Afterimage. But now let's look at Sparking Zero, for instance. Alright, we started the match, things are going on, it looks normal, but as people are taking damage, namely your opponent, they start to generate an insane amount of skill count. In only 20 seconds, he was able to have 3 bars. Now if you're going into Vegito, that's Afterimage Strike, basically. So this is something that fundamentally needs to change because it really starts to mess up the combat when we have constant combo breakers one after the other. Speaking of which, some in the comment section still were concerned about what would be a viable way to stop certain combos in Sparking Zero, such as a Violence Rush and Max Power mode. They actually had this in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but they already had a method to remedy such a situation. So I heard there's an update for Sparking Zero happening in December, and a lot of people are pretty hopeful about it. Me personally, I'm not that optimistic. After doing this video and finding out so much fundamental issues with the game, I'm not necessarily sure they're going to be able to fix it all in time. But what does that necessarily mean for Sparking Zero? Does that make it a dead game, or are we all going to drop it? No. I mean, of course you're going to have to avoid ranked, because that's going to forever be scuffed. But like I said in the old video, get those dudes off your couch. There's no reason that you have to play with them. So just like that, there's plenty of communities that are pretty much anti-cheese, and you'll have a lot of fun running scrims with them. I'm a part of some, and if you want an invite, I could just give it to you through the comment section. There's just too much fun in this game to be had to let the new generation destroy it.